Ouchies Batreps is proudly wargaming in the dirty South and a member of the Mid-South Gaming Alliance. Today's matchup is a classic matchup against Innersphere and Clan, whereas the Innersphere is matched up 10,000 BV and pulled in 2 lances of mechs. The Clan have pulled in a whole star of mechs for the same 10,000. In this traditional meeting engagement, I was initially intent on not actually casting this match, but it turns out that there is a forum thread talking about the values of light mechs in Battletech as something other than some sort of scouting force, and as a clan player, a habitual clan player, I insist that light mechs are incredibly useful. As a matter of fact, they are the core of your force. My strategy is actually pretty straightforward. I can't afford to take them on head-on, so I have a contingent of the Puma, Vulture, and Summoner on the southern end, and then I have the Grendel and the Vixen on the northern end, and they're going to split up. They're going to go with the light mechs going on the northern end of the board and the heavier mechs on the southern end of the board. It is a hammer and sickle approach. I'm going to try to send the light mechs out against the northern lance, hopefully distract them, swing around, and if they decide to engage, then they will move on. If they decide to not engage, then they'll stick around and try to get the back shots or harry them or whatever. Just keep them preoccupied so that I can send my 3 mechs against their whole lance on the southern end, and hopefully it's a good exchange. On the northern end of the board, you can already see that the Innersphere is throwing a lot of firepower at the light mechs, and this is your only defense and my best advice for any clan player that is facing Innersphere. You need to keep a high to hit mod, and this is always going to be your lights and mediums, because your heavies just can't hold the same kind of armor that's required to take the amount of shots that the Innersphere can put down. Sure, they're going to miss a lot of them, but anytime they hit, it's going to do a lot of damage, because you have armor that you can't replace. And on the southern end of the board, I've already picked out my objective for the game. I've singled out those bushwhackers, and I'm hammering home a lot of damage against them, and completely eviscerating the one on the front. Puma starts its 2-step dance, where it starts overheating with a double tap from the ERPPCs, and then slinks back, fires and slinks back. It becomes like a 6-9, then a 4-6 on either turn. So long as it's got some heavy mechs to retreat back to, things are going to be perfectly fine for the Puma. As you can see, as the first movement step, I go ahead and pull him back. It's kind of the obvious move, since he's overheated. He now needs to slink back to the cover of the Vulture and the Summoner. But as I begin to swing wide with the light mechs on the northern end, it successfully distracts the Lancet mechs. They start turning around, start making pot shots at it, and trying to do everything they can to hammer home just a little bit of damage, but they can't make anything connect. I'm pretty sure everything whiffs. On the southern end of the board, the bushwhackers begin clearing the woods and start hammering damage into the Puma, trying to do as much damage as they can to it, but again, they miss nearly everything. And we keep eviscerating the bushwhacker. We manage to double up the damage on it, give it a PSR, and it is absolutely riddled with holes. There's nothing on the thing that isn't absolutely tapped out. The Centurion and the Dervish, slower mechs, begin to start moving through the clearings or try to take shots at the clan heavies, but they can't seem to make anything connect either. They're just a little bit out of range, and again, that is your best asset as a clan player. Do not get close to the Innersphere unless you can afford to take the exchange. With the bait fully set, I go ahead and pull in the trap. I'm not going to let those light mechs actually engage that lance of Innersphere mechs. We're just going to ignore them. We're so far out of position that if they ever move over there, that's like 2 or 3 turns of movement for them. But nonetheless, the Hunchback sees an opportunity, moves in behind the Vixen, and has a shot in the fire phase. An AC-20 against that light mech, that could be disastrous. Hermes swings into the woods in the middle of the map, but who cares? It's a Hermes. Puma begins swinging behind the woods because it still is overheating just a little bit, or at least it has an opportunity to tag the Centurion. Anything that it can tag and then slink away, there's a lot of areas in which it can hide and avoid getting shot the next turn, so it's going to double tap against whatever it can find out there. Vulture and Summoner backpedal away from the bushwhackers. It is now too close to 2 lances of Innersphere equipment. We can't do that, and again, this is part of the strategy. We've got close, we singled them out, we did a lot of damage, now it's time to withdraw. We hit and fade. I can't afford to let those heavies get too close to the Innersphere mechs because they can actually maintain the tempo. I can't do that with the heavy mechs. Hunchback takes his shot against the Vixen, whiffs it, is kind of demoralizing. And the Vixen happens to make it out for just another day, while the Grendel gets behind it and manages to unload both its LBX and its medium laser in its back, but it has no effect. It's the end of turn 3 as the clan have maintained their range and speed advantage. The Inner Sphere can't seem to make anything connect. What they do is insignificant amounts of damage, while the clan is absolutely eviscerating everything that it connects to. It manages to leave both the Bushwhackers at this point riddled with holes, but the Inner Sphere mechs are just holding on by the duct tape they're made of. As a long-range sniper, the moves of the Puma are pretty predictable, so early in the initiative steps I always pull it away, because it's obvious where it's going to go. It's too hot, it needs to cool off the next turn. Next turn it'll pop back out and shoot again. Meanwhile, Inner Sphere seizes the Cojones and starts moving forward under the weight of arms that they have. They have a lot of units out there, and they could afford to lose just 1 or 2 of them. Nonetheless, I keep backpedaling as fast as I can. Backpedaling at 5 is the slowest of the summoner, and that's okay. I can manage to live with that, while the Vulture tries to cover the back of the Puma that's currently overheating. But the snare's been set, the light mechs begin swinging into the backside of the Lance of Inner Sphere mechs. Now they've got forces on either side. They've got to pick between either dealing with the clan mechs in front of them or the clan mechs behind them. That's pretty disastrous. Again, the Inner Sphere can't seem to make anything connected. The 2-hit mobs are just way too high. We're keeping just out of the range of anything that's useful, and they can't seem to do any reliable damage. Meanwhile, the Dervish is actually overheating quite a bit, and the Vixen catches it out in the open and savages the mess out of its back, opening up critical after critical into his rear, but it can't seem to cut it and make it come home. The Dervish survives despite all the damage. But the maneuver is still successful as it's left 3 whole mechs out in the middle of nowhere, and they're probably not going to see any kind of real fighting for the rest of the game. Nonetheless, the cutoff units of a Jaeger mech, a Vindicator, and to a lesser degree the Hunchback begin pushing as hard as they can to become part of the fighting again, while the Vulture begins screening, moving into a defilade position so that the Puma can still keep shots and move back slowly before it has to turn around and eventually run. The Summoner begins holding itself down behind a hill, trying to take some last stand shots at the 2 Bushwhackers that we have completely riddled full of holes. Up until this point, there's almost no armor on either of them, but they're still standing for some godforsaken reason. The Hermes swings behind the Summoner, and up until this point, I mean, he'd count out the hexes, and it always seemed a little strange, because, you know, Hermes, what's machine gun? No, it's got a sub-nose PPC or some crazy nonsense. It hits the back of the Summoner, rips off the armor of it, manages to get double crits, and takes out an ammo bin. You should have saw my face. It was just so demoralizing. The mech by itself, 1 hit, it is completely unscathed up until that point, has been put into forced withdrawal. The Vixen opens up with its own weapons and manages to open up the back of the Bushwhacker. I mean, we're not having a whole lot of success on the front end, so let's go ahead and open up the back armor too. Crits it a couple times and doesn't manage to put it down. I mean, yeah, sure, the clan mechs, there's something going wrong, something about an explosion in the internal structure, and it's time to go home. But the Inner Sphere mechs, what do they get? How do they motivate their pilots to keep fighting? There's every critical that could possibly be going off in the mech's cockpit, and yet they're just hanging on. I guess they got double vodka rations. So as the Summoner pilot, might I add, was an elite pilot, decides to pip cheerio and head back for his tea and crumpets, the Bushwhackers push forward into this fault in the line as the rest of the clan mechs begin reeling to compensate for the loss in firepower. Nonetheless, it leaves a huge opening for the light mechs. They have nothing but back shots against both Bushwhackers. They should be able to put some of them down, and they manage to finally ravage the back of one of the Bushwhackers and get enough engine hits to finally put it down. But as backpedaling isn't the Puma's best strength, it manages to get savaged by the Rack Centurion and the Dervish downrange. It's going to take a +2 PSR. We play with that tac ops rule, while the Vulture and Summoner begin to continually put down fire downrange in a fairly ineffective manner. We can't put a whole lot of fire into the Hermes right now, but we're going to try to do some damage to the Centurion downrange because it's an easier to hit mod. They're playing from our book. Nonetheless, the Hermes manages to connect with its PPC against the back of the Vixen, tears off its torso, and kills another clan mech. That's it. Okay, I called it then. The mech was pristine. I mean, I had a total of maybe 10 points all around, and yet that Hermes killed everything. But that's why Battletech is awesome. And that's been an Ouchies Batrep. And thanks for watching. And thanks for everyone to subscribe. We're over 100 subscribers now, and I really appreciate that. It really makes us all worthwhile. Every time you click a like or subscribe, it's like a little Christmas present in February when this is being recorded. Or whenever it's happening. And thanks for Ignorant Hobbyists for just giving me a little bit of nudge to actually do this. This actually turns out to be a pretty enjoyable hobby.